Hi, everybody. I wanted to do a few mini lessons to help you with the argument breakdown worksheet. Some of this is review from when we talked about active reading skills, but there's a few little bits of new information that I wanted to touch base with you on. So let's go through it. This first lesson will just be going over the pre-reading questions. So remember that active readers will preview something that they're reading that they have to do something important with. They'll make predictions about what they're going to read about. They will consider their purpose for reading, and they will touch in with their prior knowledge. So what we're doing here on this chart is kind of predicting what we expect we might read about, and also kind of touching in with our prior knowledge. So those are two things that I want you to show me on this chart when you complete this document, right? So if you haven't already done so, I'd like you to pause the video, go to R2, the article by Steve Forbes about Biden's student loan debt forgiveness program, right? And take some time to skim through that using the previewing techniques that we discussed at the beginning of the semester when I was teaching you about active reading. So that's where you kind of read the intro and read the title and skim the section headings and just get a feel for what kind of information you're going to be reading in this article. So if you haven't already done that, take a minute to do that and then come back to the video. All right. Okay. So here's some things that we want to do, especially if we're reading something that's taking an argument and we want to, one of the things that we'll be doing is sort of evaluating the argument and, seeing if the author does a good job or not, right? Which is evaluating, I know. So after pre-reading, we want to think about the issue and sort of touch base with the issue. And before you really start reading thoroughly, we want to think about what are different viewpoints on this issue that we would expect the author to discuss. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is, what do the people on opposite sides of the issue believe? So in this article on student loan forgiveness, here's kind of the debate. Some students who borrowed money to pay for their college education are eligible for student loan forgiveness programs. These programs release the students from the obligation to repay some or all of their federal student loan debt. So this is a solution that's being offered to the problem of the student debt crisis. I would imagine you're aware of the problem of the student debt crisis. If not, you could do a quick Wikipedia check to see about that. So it's important to understand the big issue, and then that this program is in response to that crisis that's out there. And one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that most reasonable people would agree that the student debt crisis is a problem. Where they disagree, and often politically, is how to solve that problem. So here's one solution that's being put forth, is this student debt forgiveness, right? So there's a little background information for you. So if you think about this, that there's people who borrowed money for school and they're going to have some of this debt just erased. They don't have to pay it back, right? Sounds good for those people, right? But we need to kind of look at the complexity of the issue. So what I want you to do on this chart is think about anyone who agrees that this is a good solution to the problem. Why would they agree? What would be their side of the issue? And I don't want you to look anything up. I just want you to brainstorm. What do you think people who support the student debt forgiveness program, what do you think they would say? Why would they support it? All right. Now we want to look at people who would disagree. Why would some people think it's a bad idea? This is not a good solution to the problem. What would they say? And again, please just brainstorm, just kind of get out of your head and put yourself in the shoes of these people who would say, no, this is not a good idea. Why would they think it's not a good idea? And just brainstorm. There's not really right or wrong answers here. We're just kind of touching in with our prior knowledge. We're making some predictions about what we think the article might have in it, right? And please make sure that you're putting any of this in your own words. It should be your ideas and your opinions and your brainstorming. So it should be in your own words, not copied and pasted from somewhere else, all right? So don't feel like you need to do extra research right now on this topic. So you're going to list here people who agree with the student loan forgiveness program, what would they say? Over here, list what you think people who disagree would say. All right. If you want to discuss with other people, you can. I'll even set up a discussion board for anybody who likes to discuss with classmates about that. Now, the last column is where you think about which side of the issue, before you really get into the article, which side of the issue do you think you stand on? Do you feel like this is a good solution to the problem? Do you feel like this is not a good solution to the problem? Are you somewhere in the middle? Sometimes people are somewhere in the middle. All right, so thinking about this issue, where do you think you stand? And the reason I ask students to think about that, especially if they're going to read something very argumentative, is this reason. As active readers and critical thinkers, we need to make sure that we're reading in both an open-minded, fair-minded, and skeptical way. We want to have this balance between open and fair-mindedness and skepticism. So if you think that the student loan forgiveness program is a good solution to the problem, you're probably going to disagree with the author because he's arguing against it. And what we have to make sure we're doing as critical thinkers is not putting up barriers to what he has to say. We still need to read in an open-minded and fair-minded, way, and just see what he has to say. All right. So if you are going to disagree with the author, we still have to listen to what he has to say as critical thinkers. Right. On the other side of the coin, if you disagree with student loan forgiveness, that means you're probably going to agree with the author. And in that case, you want to still read in a skeptical way and sort of question and challenge what he has to say and look for holes in his argument. All right. So what are your initial thoughts? Do you think you're going to agree, or do you agree or disagree with student debt forgiveness? And in that sense, do you agree or disagree with the author? So if you agree with student debt forgiveness, you're probably going to disagree with the author. If you disagree with student debt forgiveness, you're probably going to agree with the author. And then you want to think about, how is that going to affect your reading of this article? What do you need to make sure you're doing when you start reading to ensure that you're being a critical thinker? Okay. And these are just notes, your own words, previewing, predicting, touching in with our prior knowledge and our prior beliefs, setting us up for a thorough and thoughtful reading of the article. Okay. So then after that, you will go ahead and start reading and annotating. Since you're going to be working with this article for several weeks now, all right, we're going to be working with it a little bit in Unit 2, and then we're going to be writing an essay about it in Unit 3. Please don't go ahead and do any of this stuff until I tell you to. But what I'm telling you here is one of the things that we need to do as active readers is keep our purpose for reading in mind. So we need to think about why we're reading this article and what we're going to have to do with it, right? So some of the things that you'll be doing with this article are the following, all right? First thing you have to make sure that you are doing is understanding the author's ideas. Basic comprehension. If you don't understand what you're reading, you're not going to be able to do anything more advanced with it. So your first level of reading is just make sure you understand, okay? If there's any places where you don't understand what's going on, you might need to look up words or references. You might need to slow down your reading a little bit. There are some sections that are a little tricky that you might need to slow down and reread and like maybe draw little diagrams or something like that, okay? So using some of those comprehension skills that I talked about back with active reading to make sure that you understand the basics of this article, all right? There's also going to be one of your assignments is a comprehension quiz where you're going to answer questions about the article. So you have to understand it, all right? The next thing that you will be doing eventually, you're not doing this until Unit 3, but your annotations at this point might help you with that. So another task that you'll be completing in a couple weeks, not right away, don't do this yet. So eventually you'll be summarizing the article, which means that while you're annotating, here's some of the things that you should be looking for and doing. You want to look for repetition. What words are being repeated a lot? Where does that repetition shift to something new? Starting to identify major details and minor details. We talked about that in Unit 1. We're going to review some of that in another lesson this week. The other thing that would help with summarizing is if you look for individual paragraphs, or in this article, maybe groups of related paragraphs because the paragraphs are a little short, and in the margin, write a summary of those little paragraphs in your own words. That's something that will help you when eventually you will be summarizing, right? Don't write a summary yet, but you can start preparing to write a summary. Another thing that you'll be doing in Unit 3, in this essay you'll be writing in Unit 3, is you'll be responding to the author, and that'll basically be, do you agree, do you disagree with him? So look for places where you agree and disagree with Forbes, and just annotate at this point. You don't have to write the essay yet. Am I making myself clear? Okay. Another thing that you'll be doing, and this will actually be in Unit 2, this is what we're working on after the argument breakdown and the paraphrasing assignment. While we're doing that, you're also going to be looking for what we call a companion article. This will be your R3. So the Forbes article is R2, reading 2. Each individual student is going to find their own R3. Now, some of you might end up using the same article because there's only so many articles out there, but you're going to find your own R3. That's your companion article. So the annotations that will help you with that would be like noticing any holes in the argument, any places where maybe he's not providing evidence, any place where you have questions, places where you disagree, right? So this is, right now, what we're doing is we're thinking about our purpose for reading this, and you're preparing to annotate with that purpose in mind, but you're not doing any of that stuff yet, except for comprehending the first bullet, right? There was something else I was going to say. Oh, the other thing to keep in mind is when you're annotating with all these different purposes in mind, you're probably not going to do all this in one reading, all right? I would think about it in layers, and every time you read it, maybe look for something different, all right? You're not going to do all this in one shot. Okay, so that is our pre-reading and during reading lesson for the argument breakdown worksheet. Also, I know that argument breakdown shows up in D2L and it says it's a Unit 3 assignment. In my humble opinion, it works better at the beginning of Unit 2. So I moved it there. It will still count towards Unit 3, but we're just doing it now. All right. So if you have any questions about that, certainly let me know. All right. So you will work on Part 1 and Part 2, reading and annotating, and then you can move on to the next lesson. Okay. Let me know if you have questions. Take care. Bye.